Marcus got the promotion on a Tuesday. By Thursday, he had already started to disappear. Not from the office. He was still there. Earlier than anyone, later than most. His badge scanner logged him in at 7:43 every morning and out somewhere between 6 and 8 every night, depending on what was on fire. His name was still on the org chart. His face still showed up in the all-hands meeting. He was still physically present in every room they put him in. But his wife noticed it first. She said it one night in the kitchen, not as a fight, just as an observation, the way you point out that a plant has started to lean toward the window. She said, "You used to have opinions about things. Not work things. Things. What movie to watch. What to eat on Sundays. What you thought about the story she was telling." She said she couldn't remember the last time he had an opinion about anything that didn't have a deadline attached to it. Marcus laughed it off. He told her he was tired. Big project. Would ease up in a few weeks. That was 14 months ago, and here's the thing about Marcus. He's not a cautionary tale. He's not a burnout statistic. He's not someone who made bad choices or worked for a villain or missed obvious signs. Marcus was, by every professional measure, exceptional. The kind of employee organizations dream about. He hit every deadline. He absorbed every extra responsibility without complaint. He solved problems before they became problems, which meant nobody ever saw the problems, which meant nobody ever saw him. And in that quiet, consistent, invisible excellence, something was being built around him so slowly, so smoothly, that he never once felt the walls going up. He just woke up one day and couldn't find the door. If you have ever sat in a parking lot after work for 10 minutes before going inside, you know what this video is actually about. If you have ever looked at your phone on a Saturday and felt your stomach drop at the sight of an email that could wait until Monday but somehow couldn't, you already understand the weight of what we're talking about here. This is not a video about being bad at your job. This is a video about what happens when you're so good at your job that your job consumes everything around it and then starts working on you. Let's go back to the beginning. Because this didn't start with the promotion. It started years before that, the first time Marcus chose work over something else and nobody noticed the choice except him. He was 31 when he joined the company. Mid-level project coordinator, reasonable salary, manageable hours. The kind of job that was supposed to be a stepping stone. He had plans beyond it. A side project he was building on weekends. A trip he and his wife had been talking about for 3 years. A version of his life that existed somewhere past the current job, waiting for him to have enough time and enough money to reach it. The first few months he kept the balance, clocked out at 5, left things that could wait until morning, took the full lunch hour. He was good at the job, but he hadn't yet become the job. There's a distinction there that matters more than almost anything else in this story, so hold on to it. Then the restructure happened. His department lost 2 people. Budget cuts. Sudden. The workload didn't shrink to match the headcount. It never does. It stayed exactly where it was and redistributed across the people who remained. And Marcus, because he was reliable and fast and never complained, absorbed more than his share. He told himself it was temporary. He told himself this was his moment to prove something. He told himself that people who show up in hard times get remembered. They do get remembered. That part's true, just not in the way Marcus was imagining. And here's where it gets really strange. Because what happened next wasn't that the company took advantage of him. It's subtler than that. It's more honest than that. What happened was that Marcus got good at absorbing. Really good. He built systems. He optimized. He got so efficient at handling the expanded workload that it stopped looking like extra work from the outside. It just looked like his job. And a job that looks manageable never triggers relief. It just becomes the new baseline. 6 months later, the baseline expanded again. Not with a conversation. Not with a new job description. With a forwarded email. A project that used to live in another department. A client no one else wanted to handle. A responsibility that arrived with a sentence like, "Marcus, I'm looping you in on this. I know you'll have it sorted in no time," which is corporate language for, "We're giving this to you because you won't push back, and that's on you as much as it's on us." And Marcus didn't push back. He sorted it in no time. This is the part nobody warns you about. When you're this good at your job, you don't get punished. You don't get overlooked. You get loaded, quietly, incrementally. In amounts small enough that each individual addition seems reasonable, even flattering. Until one day you sit down to do the math and realize you're carrying 3 people's worth of work on one person's salary. and the organization around you has quietly restructured itself to depend on you so completely that moving you would require a renovation nobody wants to fund. 14 months after he joined, Marcus got his first promotion, not because he asked for it, because his manager needed to justify keeping him at his current salary when the scope of his role had outgrown the title by a country mile. The promotion was real. The raise was 4%. His responsibilities doubled within 8 months of the new title because the title signaled to the organization that Marcus could handle more, and the organization was correct, and Marcus kept handling it. By year 4, he was the person everyone called. Not just his team. Adjacent teams, other departments. People who had heard his name through the particular kind of professional whisper network that means, if it's broken, give it to Marcus. His calendar had 47 recurring meetings. He counted once. He stopped counting because the number felt like something he couldn't afford to know. His wife's name appeared in his phone contacts less than his manager's name appeared in his notifications. Wait for it. Because this is the part that took Marcus the longest to see, and it's the part that makes everything else make sense. He was never stuck. He was never overlooked. He was never being managed out or sidelined or passed over. Every performance review was glowing. Every skip-level conversation reinforced how valued he was. His manager genuinely liked him. The senior leadership team knew his name, which is rare enough in organizations of that size to mean something. And that's what made the trap invisible. There was no villain. No moment where someone sat across a table and decided to use him. The organization was simply functioning the way organizations function, optimizing for stability and continuity and the path of least resistance. And Marcus was the path of least resistance, the most frictionless point in the entire system, which meant the system routed everything through him, not because anyone decided to, because systems go where the flow goes easiest. Here is what that actually costs. Not in career terms, not in salary terms. In the other terms, the ones that don't appear in any performance review. Marcus's side project died in year 2. Not dramatically. It just stopped receiving his attention, week by week, and attention is the only thing that keeps something like that alive. He stopped mentioning it. His wife stopped asking. The folder with the files sat in his desktop for another 18 months before he deleted it during a late night of laptop reorganization that he was doing instead of sleeping. The trip they'd been talking about got pushed to next year 3 times in a row until next year stopped feeling like a plan and started feeling like a sentence that meant never. He had a friend, a real one, the kind you can call without a reason, who eventually stopped calling and texting with the particular quiet of someone who has stopped expecting a response. Marcus noticed the silence. He thought about reaching out. He kept not reaching out. The gap between them grew into the kind of distance that requires a conversation he didn't have the energy for, so it just stayed there. His son, who was 8 during year 3, asked him once on a Sunday afternoon if he could come to work with him someday just to see what it was like. Marcus said, "Sure, we'll figure it out." His son never asked again. Kids are remarkably accurate at reading which questions have a real answer and which ones are just noise. None of this is the company's fault. That's what makes it so hard to be angry about. The company never asked him to skip the trip, never asked him to let the friendship fade, never instructed him to give it everything he had until there was nothing left over for anything else. The company just kept presenting work that needed doing, and Marcus kept doing it, because that's who he was. And nobody has to tell someone who does that kind of thing to keep doing it. They just do. No, seriously. Think about that for a second. The thing that makes you excellent at your job is often the same thing that makes you bad at protecting yourself from it. The conscientiousness, the follow-through, the inability to leave something unfinished. Those qualities don't switch off at 5 o'clock. They don't discriminate between a project deliverable and a friendship or a side dream or a Sunday afternoon. They just keep going. And the world around you, personal and professional, will let them. Now here is the part where this gets complicated, where the simple story about work-life balance and hustle culture starts to fall apart. Because Marcus is not a victim of a broken system. The system did exactly what it was designed to do. The part that's broken is the assumption Marcus was operating under for years without ever examining it. The assumption was this: if he just kept delivering at this level long enough, the sacrifice would eventually pay off in a form that made it worth it. More money, bigger title, more control. The moment when the hard work would be recognized in a way that felt commensurate with what it actually cost, that moment doesn't come. not through this path, not automatically. The organization is not tracking the cost to you. It is tracking the cost to the organization. And as long as the cost to the organization is low and the output is high, the equation is solved from their end. They have no structural reason to change the terms. Marcus figured this out on a Thursday in November. Not through a conversation, not through a revelation, but through a spreadsheet. His spreadsheet. The personal one he'd started keeping a year before because something in him knew the official numbers didn't tell the whole story. He was making $23,000 less than the market rate for someone with his exact scope of responsibility. Not his title, his actual scope, the work he was actually doing every single day. $23,000. He sat with that number for a long time in the quiet of his home office, which used to be the guest room, which used to be available for guests before the desk moved in and the guests stopped coming. He pulled up the last 4 years of performance reviews. Glowing. Every one. He pulled up the last 4 years of raises. 3%, 3%, 4%, 3.5%. He did the math. Then he looked up what a new hire in his role from outside would cost the company. The number made him close the laptop. A new hire. Someone with no institutional knowledge, no system built in their head, no client relationships cultivated over years, no tribal memory. A stranger off LinkedIn, walking in with a fraction of Marcus's capability and context. The company would pay that stranger more on day one than they were paying Marcus after 4 years of exceptional performance. Not because anyone was trying to be unfair, because that's how compensation works. External hires get priced at current market rates. Internal employees get priced against the band that was set when they were hired, adjusted by annual percentages that have nothing to do with what the market currently looks like. Marcus had been delivering at an accelerating rate while his compensation compounded at a crawl. The math was the message. And the message was, nobody is coming. The promotion he'd been told was being evaluated for the past 2 quarters existed somewhere in a process that had no deadline and no champion and no mechanism for urgency, because Marcus wasn't creating urgency. He kept showing up. He kept delivering. He wasn't a flight risk. He wasn't a disruption. He was the most stable variable in an unstable environment. You don't fix what's stable. You lean on it. He requested a meeting with his manager. He came with a single document, not a complaint, not an ultimatum, a document. Market compensation data for his scope and tenure, side by side with his current number, a 3-sentence request for a salary review and a conversation about his trajectory over the next 12 months. His manager went quiet in the way people go quiet when they didn't expect the data to exist. The conversation that followed was the most substantive professional conversation Marcus had had in 4 years. His manager acknowledged the gap, said the right things, scheduled a follow-up with HR. The follow-up happened. A review was initiated. Numbers were discussed that hadn't been discussed before. Marcus received a 12% adjustment 3 months later. Not everything. Not the full gap. But the ceiling moved. His manager, for the first time in their working relationship, started asking Marcus what he wanted. Not what he could handle. What he wanted. That shift, from what you can take to what you want, is the whole thing. That's the entire story. Everything before it was the prologue. But here's what Marcus understood by the end of it, the thing he hadn't understood while he was inside the machine. The 12% wasn't the victory. The document was the victory. The moment he stopped waiting for the system to recognize what his effort was worth and started presenting evidence of it himself, that was the moment the relationship changed. Not because the company suddenly cared more, because he'd removed the thing the system was depending on. The gap between what they knew and what he knew. The information asymmetry that kept the equation comfortable for everyone except him. The system will offer you exactly what it calculates you'll accept. It has always been doing this. It will keep doing this. Not out of malice, out of math. And the only thing that changes the math is changing what you know when you sit down at the table. Here's what Marcus knows now that he didn't know 4 years ago. Being irreplaceable at your current level is not a stepping stone. It's a foundation being built around you, one responsibility at a time, until you're holding up the floor for everyone above you, and the floor is the highest you'll go. The organization does not promote the floor. The organization depends on the floor. There is a difference, and it is not a small one. The skills that make you exceptional at the level you're on are execution skills, speed, reliability, precision, problem solving under pressure. Those are real skills. They are genuinely valuable, but they are not the skills evaluated for the level above. The level above runs on judgment, vision, the management of ambiguity, the influence of people who don't report to you. You don't develop those skills by getting better at your current job. You develop them by deliberately stepping into spaces where your current skills won't save you, which means making yourself a little less comfortable and a little more visible in rooms that have nothing to do with what's on your current task list. You can also stop making yourself the only person who understands what you do, because if you're the only person, you're not valuable, you're immovable, and immovable people don't get promoted, they get maintained. Document your processes, cross-train someone, make your role possible to hand off. Not because you're making yourself replaceable, because you're making yourself portable. Portable people get promoted. The organization can finally imagine them somewhere else, and make your ambitions loud, not aggressive, not entitled, loud. Your manager cannot read your mind. Your silence about where you want to go is being read as satisfaction with where you are. And satisfied employees don't create urgency. They don't trigger the calculation that asks, what happens if we lose this person? That calculation is the only thing that makes your trajectory a priority instead of an assumption. Say directly, clearly, professionally, I am not planning to stay in this seat indefinitely. What does the path forward look like? That sentence changes the dynamic in the room faster than any performance review ever will. Marcus is still at the company. His title changed 6 months after the salary conversation. His workload is not smaller, but it's different in a way that matters. He's involved in strategy conversations he wasn't in before. And in those rooms, he's building the kind of visibility that makes a name come up when a role opens. He took the trip. 3 weeks. First one in 4 years. His phone stayed in the hotel safe for most of it, and the world did not end. His son went to a baseball game with him on a Saturday in September, just the two of them, and Marcus left his phone in the car. He still has 41 recurring meetings. Didn't say the job got easier. Said the relationship to it changed. His wife noticed that too. If any part of this story lives in your chest right now, you already know the thing this video was really trying to say. Not a fact about salary bands or promotion cycles, though those things matter. The thing underneath all of it. The part that took Marcus 4 years to understand. Your effort is not the same thing as your strategy. Working harder is not the same thing as working towards something. Being excellent at the job you have is not automatically preparation for the job you want. And the longer you wait for the system to reward you on its own terms, the more evidence you're giving it that the current arrangement is fine. It is not fine. You know it isn't. You've known it for a while. The question has never been whether you're good enough. You're clearly good enough. The question is whether you're going to keep proving it to an organization that is already using it, or whether you're going to start proving it to yourself in a way that changes the terms. Nobody comes. That's the hard truth. Nobody is going to walk into your office and say, we noticed how much you've been carrying, and we want to make sure you know we see it, and here's the recognition that matches the cost. That conversation doesn't exist anywhere in the organizational playbook. What exists is a series of quiet calculations about what it costs to keep you and what it costs to replace you, and as long as keeping you is cheaper and less disruptive, the equation stays solved. Change the equation. Not by threatening to leave, not by becoming difficult. By closing the gap between what they know and what you know, by making your ambitions visible, by building toward the level above instead of perfecting the level you're on, and by understanding that the ceiling you're standing under is only a ceiling because you haven't yet put your hands flat against it and pushed. Marcus did. And the ceiling moved. The question now is whether you're going to wait another 4 years to find that out. If you want to understand how every part of this system actually works, the compensation bands, the evaluation files, the decisions being made in rooms you're not in, stay right here. Because this is exactly the kind of thing we go into every week. Not advice, not productivity hacks, the actual mechanics, the stuff nobody puts in the onboarding packet. The people who find this channel once tend to stay, not because we tell them what they want to hear, but because we tell them what they need to know before the situation forces them to find out the hard way. Marcus needed to know it 4 years before he did. You found it today. That's not nothing.